Okay, hi everyone and welcome. Thanks for being with us tonight. My name is Ellie Roser and I'm currently the student athlete outreach ambassador for the Malone Center at Furman. And tonight we have four awesome panelists with us who are all former Furman student athletes, and they're going to share their advice on optimizing time as a student athlete at Furman, how to leverage the athletic experience in a job search and career, and the transition from sports into the professional life. And I'll let them introduce themselves shortly, but before I begin, I'm excited to announce that Coach Carson is going to facilitate the panel for us tonight. Coach Carson is the head women's basketball coach here at Furman, and she was also a standout player on the Furman women's basketball team too. So thanks, Coach Carson, for doing this tonight. And with that, we'll have the panelists introduce themselves, and Coach Carson, you can take it away after that.
Absolutely. Hey, Kena, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll go first. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kena Hodges, class of 2001. I didn't feel old till I said that. Former women's basketball player, currently a transition coach and leadership consultant.
Rachel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Sindler. I recently graduated from Furman in 2021. I was on the women's lacrosse team. Now I'm living in New York City, and I work at Bank of America doing public finance investment banking.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. James?
Hey, everyone. James Perez. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a product owner for Duke Energy and also started my own company with a fellow Furman grad called Stoke Performance. And yeah, excited to be here tonight and answer some questions and talk through all this.
Thanks, James. And finally, Adi.
Adi Filipovic, class of 06. I guess it says 07 in the bio. I stayed for my fifth year, played football. I am a co-founder of a private equity firm in Atlanta. I co-founded it with another Furman grad who's class of 94, maybe 92. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. There's some amazing questions and a lot of information. And I believe that Ellie and Rebecca are going to monitor the chat for us. So if you think of any questions during the time, please put them in the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can because we want to make this this conversation about you guys and helping your professional career, your life after sport, so college sports. So we'll start with having about each panelist, panelists answer, and then additional panelists can add in if they have anything to add. And like we said, just add to the chat if you want any other questions, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So we'll start this one with, let's go with Rachel and Adi. What did you take advantage of at Furman as a student athlete, either inside or outside of athletics, that helped shape you today?
So outside of lacrosse, I also did admissions ambassadors, which I feel like not many athletes know about. They are always looking for a few student athletes to represent our student body. And I also was a part of Greek life, economics society. I was very involved in my major. I was a math economics major, so both departments. And I also was on SAC. So I think having a well-rounded extracurricular group of activities outside of lacrosse really helped me develop my soft skills that were also aided by lacrosse that then pushed me into my career and helped me in my interview process. And I would say it is definitely sometimes overwhelming having that much. I've definitely had to scale back. I think my freshman and sophomore year, I was super ambitious to get very involved. And I've definitely had to scale down, or, there are times when my coach would say, hey, you look very tired, maybe scale back. But I think having a combination of different extracurriculars really helped me develop my skills that lacrosse really added to.
I frankly didn't do much of anything other than football in school. I was a double major in math and economics. I was objectively a very serious student. I studied hard. I had two hard majors. I took academics seriously. I wasn't the most talented person on the football team. So, in terms of the time that I invested in football to get myself competitive enough to play the level that I wanted to play. It was a serious effort. It didn't sort of come naturally. So I'm not saying that's the most optimal path, but I feel like I truly sold out as a student and as an athlete and prioritized those two things. It maybe wasn't the most optimal path in terms of, career, preparing myself for a career. Left Furman with, frankly, my lack of own investment into my own career preparation, other than in terms of how do I market myself out there and what I do for my career. But in terms of preparedness, the skill set, academically and athletically, that was where I developed my substances, kind of carried the day from, for my career. But in terms of all the, prep stuff, I didn't quite invest enough while I was at Furman.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Rachel.
I think one more thing to add that I didn't, and I'm sure we'll get more in depth on this topic, but I did use the Malone Career Center a lot, and I reached out to them a bit earlier on in the process because of the job and the industry I wanted to go into. I knew that I had to start the recruiting process and prep work ahead of time, ahead of the normal junior, senior year recruiting. And I think nowadays, and I was seeing it throughout my years at Furman, that the Malone Center is definitely way more involved with athletic teams. But I would just encourage everyone, regardless of if you're doing 5 extracurriculars on top of a Division I sport and managing a full academic load, like that's a lot to ask of anyone, and different people can manage certain things. But I would definitely make the effort to just have an intro meeting with someone at the Career Center or in the internship office, because that can really get things moving for you.
And you can tell you guys are already doing that, because there's 32 of you on here that are already making that effort, which I applaud you for, because obviously none of us had this available to us. So great start with that. Thank you guys for those. Let's go Kena and James. How did your undergraduate experience at Furman as a student athlete prepare you for the role you are in now?
So it didn't, not directly, right? So I was clear about one thing, like I didn't want a regular job when I graduated from Furman. And, my background wasn't like a number of non-athletes at Furman. I didn't have a job waiting for me when I graduated, and I didn't have the network of my parents, or specifically of my mom, waiting for me when I graduated. But I knew that I wanted to keep going with basketball. But I did know that basketball could be a vehicle for other things. And so that's exactly what it was. I learned that through my internship at Furman. So I wasn't on a career path per se, but my senior year, we didn't have the Malone Center, but we did have an internship that you had for the semester. I interned at News Channel 7. I can't remember what they call it now, but I was the sports intern with Pete Hannity. And that was great. And I got to travel around with him, and it was phenomenal. So I'm still keeping contact with Pete to this day. I went on to play overseas. When I came back from overseas, I got a call from the Washington Mystics. I was on their team. I got cut, but while I was at the practices, I was introducing myself to people that were movers and shakers for the Washington Mystics and the Washington Wizards. I learned those skills as a result of the internship program that I had at Furman, because they made us go to networking events. They taught us how to network, how to schmooze and work the room. And, they taught us to always have your resume in your glove compartment in your, in your car when you're looking for a job. So the day I got cut from the Washington Mystics practice team, I was having a conversation with one of the guys that worked for the Wizards. And I just said, "Hey, I just got cut. Are you guys hiring?" And I kind of did it tongue in cheek. He's like, "Yeah, give me your resume." It's like, hold on, ran to my truck, pulled it out, handed it to him, had an interview 2 days later, had an offer the day after that. So I will say that the things that I learned for the importance of learning how to network and how to be confident in that part of it helped me actually get my first job once I came back from overseas.
So in other words, be aggressive and don't let things come to you. Go get the things done.
Go get it.
James, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, again, what I'm doing now, I was an econ major and I'm in technology now. And then obviously like starting your own business, you don't really like take a lot of entrepreneurship classes at Furman, or at least I actually never took one. But one of the things that the running coaches preach, right, is like start small, think big. And you can apply that to anywhere in your life. But one thing I would say is, that first job out of school might not be perfect, and it probably won't be. And that's okay, right? So like, obviously just don't settle for any job just to take a job, right? If you're passionate, competitive, seek the career and the thing you want to do. But also know that like, if you feel like you have a good opportunity in front of you, seize it, and then know you can learn skills there and pivot into new careers. Because I found myself there, right, where I was a little lost after graduation. The career I really wanted to go into, I just kept getting denied. And so I did take a job I was excited about, but truly, if you would have asked me 6 months before, I was not. But it ended up in the long run actually being a good opportunity. So it's hard, right? Because before that in your life, you probably really want to go to Furman, you probably really want to play a sport. And so all of a sudden, maybe you don't get that perfect job and it feels like it's not correct, but that's okay because it's the first step in a long career. Just be okay with that initial entry point if it's not absolutely perfect.
Well, one thing that I was going to add about this, and again, I was so not career oriented. Again, I didn't have an internship. I didn't have a job till I was 23. On one hand, a really good student, but had no concept of what it means to have a job. And so my view on Furman student athletes, incredibly well positioned from the substance perspective to have very productive careers. At my time, it seems like you guys have made such a long stride with Malone Center and such, missing that 5 to 10% that's kind of superficial but important in terms of helping you, navigate the job market. You come out of, you're in high school, you're supposed to get to college. That's a path. You play a sport, that's the sport that you play. You try to go pro. For the people that are trying to go pro, that's a path. The people that are going to law school, it's a law school. If you don't have law school or medical school and not pro, for the first time in your life, you're kind of like, what do I do? It's like, and that's where I was. I was a good econ student, so I was like, maybe I should get a PhD in economics. It's kind of a terrible idea, and like 5-year investment for what? And I didn't want to be a professor. Luckily, I pivoted and didn't go get a PhD and spend 5 years, and but the grind, the preparation, navigating urgency and a tough schedule, I mean, that is the substance that can carry the day for a career for a really long time. You just got to take kind of control of something that's completely new for the first time, which is, I don't know what I'm going to do for the next 40 years of my life. And that takes some deliberate effort. But in terms of the substance, the student athlete from Furman is just super well equipped for so many interesting careers. And some of them, newsflash, are a hell of a lot better than a professional athlete. There are some really well-paying jobs that don't retire in 2.3 years, right? And they pay a lot more than the minimum, salary in the league, for example, and they last for 40 years. And so awareness and taking control of what's out there, and what James said is like, the first job that you get, not only is it not going to be optimal, you have no idea really what you want to do when you're mid-30s or 40. And so, I don't know, it's just different cadence, but credit to Furman. Seems like the Malone Center has done a lot to help on that journey.
You mentioned a word, a key word was pivot. And I think Furman does teach you how to pivot, right? As a student, you learn how to pivot. As an athlete, you definitely learn how to pivot and how to make the best or the most and thrive in any particular situation. I think that's something that athletics just teaches you in general. When it comes to your career, a lot of students don't know what they want to do with their lives post-graduation, and they're not really giving that any thought until their last semester, at Furman. At least I did. Right? I just knew I didn't want to go work for my mom, and I didn't want a real job. But learning the importance of learning how to pivot, learning how to be able to speak to what you do know, learning that the skills that you have are transferable skills, particularly in your first couple of jobs early on in your career, really helps you to go far, but you have to be able to articulate those things. And that's probably more important than anything else. But because if you decide, let's say you're fortunate enough to go on and play professionally or semi-professionally, you're now behind students that came right out of college that went right into the workforce. And so you're 25, 26 going against a 25, 26-year-old that's been working for 4 years, right? And so they have that experience. So you have to be able to speak to, no, I haven't done that, but here's how I paved my way, and I use athletics as a vehicle, not as the end all. So that's also important. But learning how to pivot, the importance of that is really going to be key no matter what you do.
Yeah, well, speaking of pivoting, I think that's a great transition to, I'm going to skip one question because I think you guys are hitting on something and it kind of relates to this question. So we'll have Rachel and James give your perspective as well. What was the biggest challenge transitioning from a student athlete into the professional world? Adi kind of hit on it. Like, once I graduated, once I played pro in Europe, similar to Kena, and then I was like, holy crap, what am I supposed to do? Like, because as Adi pointed out, I had a schedule. I always knew what time practice was. I knew where I was supposed to be. I knew all this. And then, okay, basketball in Europe, I knew what time practice was. I knew where I was supposed to be. I knew when my check was coming. Oh crap. I was pre-med at Furman. I'm a basketball coach. So we talk about a pivot. There it is. Because I got lost. I just knew, like Kena, it wasn't working for my parents. I didn't want to move back home, which a lot of us have to do. So what, for you guys, James, Rachel, what's the biggest transition from going to a student athlete to the professional world? Because it's scary.
Yeah, I laugh because I'm still within my first year out from Furman.
Absolutely.
So that is very real and happening for me right now, this transition. And I would say going into Furman from my high school, I had kept myself very busy in high school, so it perfectly fit into Furman. So I felt like I always have had easy transitions to the next stage in my young 23-year-old life. But this next chapter, not having that structured schedule was definitely the most challenging part for me. I was so used to waking up, morning practice, shower, go to class, eat lunch, treatment, extra help with professors, give a tour, go to bed. Maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday looked different than Tuesday, Thursday, or if we had a traveling week. But this was the first time that I was kind of on my own, and sometimes days and hours, like 2 hours ahead of me, doesn't look the same as I originally thought yesterday. So I think just having that flexibility, and that's something that you do learn on and off the field as a student athlete. So you have to change plans mid-game. You're used to making those adjustments. So while it has been challenging and it hasn't always been great, and I've had to, motivate myself to go to the gym or do this, do my laundry, and sometimes I'm at work until my boss leaves because I can leave after he leaves, and sometimes he wants to stay until the late night. So I think having that flexibility, I've definitely tried to lean on that component and soft skill that I learned through athletics to sort of help me in this transition. But I would definitely say, the motivation part and having self-discipline and creating the structure yourself has definitely been the biggest sort of challenge, and something that I'm now getting into a groove of more than 6 months after graduation. So.
Yeah, I think mine was the dining hall. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that is a transition though. Dining halls don't exist once you graduate. I have never eaten Moe's though, really, since I graduated. I think I overdosed on that. Yeah, so I think what helped me was keeping a structure. So I got to play a sport that you can continue to do without friends or a ball, like right after graduation, because you can just wake up and run. And so I kind of kept some of those routines. And that can look different for a lot of sports. You pick up a new hobby. But keeping structure in my whole life has helped. That also helps at work, right? Especially in an environment, a lot of you all may get your first job and it may be completely remote, which there's strong benefits to being remote. I've been remote for 2 years, And there's obviously some cons too, right? I'm sure you experienced that as you took, virtual classes versus in person. But being disciplined when, getting into the workforce is hugely helpful. But, I think that loss of structure is huge. And then, like on a real note, higher education is awesome, but it doesn't teach you personal finance. So I would say just if you haven't already taught yourself, or, your parents haven't instilled that in you, the internet has a lot of education, or find a mentor, but that's important too, right? Because hopefully you're going to start getting a paycheck, but you're going to also owe people money. And you probably already do in certain times in your life, but that's really important. So start to balance that out. Don't get 8 credit cards in 1 year. Think through that whole process. But yeah, it's a fun next phase of your life as well.
All right, this next question is going to be for all of you. And so I'm going to try to put it, we're all in the sports world. So you have to excuse me if I mess up your analogy. But the question is, what are the soft skills or attributes that you gain from athletics and that are essential for a workforce that should be highlighted in an application process or interview? So how we're going to adjust this question is we have to equate it to, for Kena and myself, this is your last second place, shot clock's going down. Okay, James, maybe the last 100 meters. I don't know if that's correct. Rachel, y'all have a shot clock too. So shot clock's going down. And Adi, you're in the red zone. And I don't know if you were offense or defense, but we got to get a stop. These are the last few. So quick nuggets, something that you have. It can't be a long answer. It's 2 things you learned from athletics that you're they ask you in an interview, or they're looking at your resume that you need to highlight that you gained from your athletic experience at Furman.
Let me start.
You go for it. You got it.
Process and team. Obviously, I played a team sport. I played offensive line and touched a football my whole lifetime career. Never had the desire why should I catch a ball or carry the ball? It is, with no disrespect to anybody else, and some of y'all sports I actually like better now. and so this is not about football, but it is the most selfless sport and the most team-oriented sport. So, and the other thing about the career and a job, the freaking Monday practice and in football, you practice all this time to play 40 games, and you may get playing time if you're an average player in 20 of them, right? If you get to start. The commitment to the grind of doing the little things right and really believe in it. When you get conviction that we all do the little things right, that makes a difference. Alabama is really good at football. They don't get to run the out route any more proprietary, unique way than everybody else. You can watch the damn video. They're going to run it the same way. Their athletes are a little bit better. They're not better than Clemson's or Georgia's, but they put it all together, the attention to the details. So the process, if you buy into that, if you know that when you hate that Tuesday afternoon, you got to go to practice, that you'll get through the practice because it makes all the difference in the world. But you get a pretty good shot for a really good career, if you know that about yourself and you can believe in something like that. So yeah, team and process.
Awesome. I like that because I've learned over the last year, my team hears it all the time. So Adi, you said you played offensive line. Linemen are the only position in anything I've ever learned in any sport that have no stats. So literally they do everything just to protect a quarterback, and they have not one single stat for an offensive lineman. So you talk about selfless, that's pretty amazing. So Rachel, what are your quick nuggets? Shot clock's going down. What has to be in that interview on that resume?
I would say to make the general phrase works well under pressure a little bit better, I would say stays composed under pressure. I was a defender, so when that shot clock was winding down, I had to hold my own. I played low on the crease with Ellie, who's hosting this Zoom. And so we had to stay focused and make sure we're doing our part to help our fellow teammates. And it can't get frazzled. And I would say in the workplace that translates, you never know when there's a fire drill. That's when something's hitting the fan last minute and you have to quickly turn either a new presentation around or change a solution. And so while it's a different type of problem or experience or shot clock winding down, we've all been through that as student athletes where you're under pressure and you have to perform well and stay composed and do your best with limited time and in a crunch.
Awesome. I love that. Kena, you're on mute.
My dog was barking, so I had to make sure you didn't hear this horse in the background. Accountability, being able to take accountability and hold others accountable is important. That's definitely a transferable skill. And learning how to trust, that you can delegate, right? And you know how to kind of stay in your lane. I have this saying that you get in accidents when you get out of your lane. So like, I know my strengths. And I know the areas that were not I was not a point guard, right? And I wanted to be a 3-point shooter, but that was not my strength at the time. So I stuck with what worked for me. And what that means in the corporate world is that I recognize my strengths. I can tell you exactly what the areas are that I need to improve upon, but here's how I do that, right? And so if I'm in a position where I'm hiring somebody, I'm going to hire people that are really good in those areas that I'm not as good. So we all look good. We all, complement each other. So, being able to delegate and accountability are two really big things.
And James,
Yeah.
last 100 meters.
If you don't want to use the word failure, but being able to quickly pivot from failure or learn quickly, right? Because you're gonna mess up in practice, race is gonna go bad, game's gonna go bad, but it's done, it's over with. Same thing at work, whether you're gonna work for a big company, small company, start your own thing, just you gotta have a really, like the Ted Lasso, you gotta have like the memory of a goldfish and just keep moving.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that was great. What do you wish you would have told your freshman self?
Ooh.
I'll let anyone jump in.
I'll take that one. I would not have hung out with my teammates as much. It's not personal. I love you, Jackie. I mean, you go through the trenches with your teammates, right? But, and you do life with your teammates for 4 years and they become some of your closest friends for the rest of your life. Yes. But you do need to diversify your group of friends and the people that you spend time with, because the world does not look like your team. That's just the reality of it. And Furman was still a bubble, so the world doesn't really look like Furman either. But I would say that it was important to, I started to do that my junior and senior year, but I would have started my freshman year, because you just never know where these relationships will take you. I have worked in human resources at the executive level for a very long time. And I can tell you, I used to run the internship program in one of my roles for Amnesty International. And a resume would come across my desk from a student athlete from Furman. They were automatically going to get an interview, because I just know they're going to come to the table with certain things. And one of the interns that I hired, he played football at Furman. He left from that internship program, got a job with IBM, and he's doing amazing things. And so it's important that you learn that, yeah, the folks that you spend all this time with, that's great. But when it's time for you to have to stand up and be an adult, if you have not taken the time to just learn and get to know other people and other cultures and learn how to communicate with people that don't look like you and don't think like you and all of that stuff, you're going to be behind the 8 ball, because the world really doesn't look like what you see every single day at Furman.
Anyone
I'll
else?
just say a quick one of study abroad if you can. I didn't. Really wish I did. I know it's very difficult and you're really competitive. If you could do it during the summer, just maybe try to make it work.
Yeah. Rachel, Adi?
I would say to kind of jump off of what Kena said, I was very, very close with my teammates, and I wouldn't change that for the world. Something I started doing after my freshman year, I think coming in as a freshman, you might be a little more hesitant to reach out to other people and get super involved in other activities that not a lot of your other teammates are doing, and sort of be on your own. And if you think about it, every non-student athletes, they come in maybe not knowing people, have a random roommate. So we have an advantage that we already come in with a built-in family. So, I mean, maybe coming in freshman year, first semester, get comfortable, get acclimated into your new environment. But I would say don't be afraid to do things without your teammates. And in where it applies to me and where I would say I would encourage you all to go, your own way and be okay with being independent is in your coursework. My freshman year, I took a lot of classes. I was kind of on the fence about doing pre-med. I had a lot of friends who were health science majors. So I was like, I'll just take this class. I'll do this, when really my interest wasn't there. And so not that I was playing catch up because it was only my freshman year, but I did feel as if I started a little bit sooner with some of my classes, I might have had a little more space in my schedule, some flexibility down the line. So I would just encourage you to really follow that inner voice and do what you want, because you're with your teammates at practice and in the training room, in the locker room all the time, that it's really okay early on to, sort of find your own path and go that way. And also just another thing, I would just take the stress down a lot of notches. It'll all work out, I would say.
Patty, anything for your freshman year self?
No, I was a perfect freshman year self. I think this thing is, it was so stupid how insulated I was to the football. It was like almost so deliberate. It's like, why do I need anybody else, meet anybody else? It was so immature. It was so, I don't know. It was like, we got our group, we got our signing class. There was 23 of us, class of 06, and then we got other, 75 teammates, and why anybody else? And it was so stupid in that regard. There was a whole university around. That changed over time, but it took way too long, to change. And the clock runs out, anywhere in life on relationships. And I'm not deficient from friendships and relationships, but the clock runs out and you don't get to do the college thing again. And it's life is great after college, but you literally never get to do college again. It's a little more complicated out here with jobs, and if you got family and kids, and I don't know, you get older and things hurt and you don't get to. It's such a unique time. But I don't know that you kind of tell yourself really that you got to kind of live it and then regret it for the mistakes you've made.
Awesome. Well, a reminder again to anyone who is watching it to submit any questions you have in the chat. I'm going to start jumping down to some of the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So one question that was kind of repetitive, so feel free, if everyone wants to answer this, that would be great. How did you find other outlets in your life other than your sport? So you kind of hit on find some other friends that are not on the team, which I think we all kind of wanted to do that. But what were some of the other outlets outside of your sport? So you wanted to get away from the court, the field, the track, or cross country. What were your other outlets?
I can.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So I got involved on campus. And I know Rachel talked about this briefly. I as well did admissions. And I really love that opportunity. So I think I got involved somewhere else on campus. So that was kind of my college experience, being at Furman, being able to do that, which I really enjoyed. And you learn really great skills when you do something like that. And then I'll kind of maybe answer the question in two parts, just after school, right? So your sport's now gone. But I think there's a lot of ways once you're a professional doing, you can continue to do your sport recreationally. But there's other things just you are involved on campus, now go get involved in your community in certain ways, right? Because you have maybe a little bit of disposable income, or you have things you can do. So look to kind of stretch yourself. So don't let your involvement in your community stop at Furman as well. So just kind of 2 ways after and post I've done that.
Yeah, I would take some inventory of what you're passionate about, right? So when I got to Furman as a freshman, I I came in as a pre-engineering major, and I planned to do the dual degree program through Furman and Georgia Tech, so that I graduate what was supposed to be 3 years at Furman, 2 at Georgia Tech. It would be 4 at Furman, 2 at Georgia Tech, but I graduate with a master's. And I took like my first C++ programming class, and I almost failed it. And it was partly because our labs coincided with basketball practice. And our coach at the time was like, "You don't miss practice." So it didn't matter that I like actually have class. So I changed my major to something else, and I didn't like that. And I changed it again to communications. And I found that between that and I loved foreign languages, that's where I actually got my first A's at Furman. So like literally got my first A in public speaking, got my first A in Japanese. So I then started to I joined the, I don't remember what it was called at the time, but it was like all of the students that studied Japanese, there was a club for that. And we would go to the, well, we call them sensei, but we would go to professors' homes, and, we got to just kind of immerse ourselves into that culture. So that was great. I loved working with kids. So I joined Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I volunteered with SLBC at the time, Student League for Black Culture. Don't know what it's called now, but that's what it was called then. Okay. And then, and I love to sing. So I was on the Furman University Gospel Ensemble. So those were some things that I did outside of that. And I don't think any other, well, we had like 1 or 2 teammates that were on Furman Gospel Ensemble, but the rest of them couldn't sing. So I couldn't sing a lick. So that was cool. But even socially outside of those things, we would all go to this club together, but it was like $20 to get into that club. And the men's team, we had this joke that they were Furman International, because at one point they had more international players than they had U.S. players, but they would all go to this Latin club, and it was $5 to get in there. So one time I just ditched my teammates once again and went and paid $5 and had the time of my life, but it opened me up to something that I was not normally or naturally exposed to. And so now, these are just things that I naturally do. So sometimes you just have to find what you love to do, because it might not be related to the sport. It might not be related to your classes. And you have to find, little pockets of happiness outside of that, when coaches get on your nerves, when your teammates get on your nerves, when you're just tired of being around the same people all the time. That's just, something that worked for me.
I mean, I have a couple of, 2 almost seem like opposite perspectives. At different stages in my life, I have not been that well-rounded in moment in time. Just about everything that I've done, I've kind of committed myself, things that matter to me. I sold out and really went deep and after something. I had these different stages when I did that, and it seemed like not that well balanced. And then when I look back over a longer run, I've gotten to do a lot of different things. Where am I going with that? Some of this is inherent. Some of us seek new experiences. Some of us don't. Having said that, if you've never been, and we come from so many different backgrounds, right? If you've never gotten exposure or awareness to certain things, you can be damn sure that you'll never appreciate the upside from it. Somehow, if you don't, and the problem as an adult, the clock really runs out to you as a person, to shape you as a person. Like, it's never too late to do something, that's true. But at 23, 24, 25, you get more entrenched in who you are, and it's pretty hard to change you. So if you're going to take risk, if you're going to get, stress test who you are a little bit, developing the ability to be uncomfortable, nothing good has ever come from some level of discomfort, like without taking some level of risk. And it is a learned behavior. Like it is putting yourself in situations where, it's an uncomfortable situation. If you haven't gone to the movies by yourself, I haven't gone to movies in a long time, so movies is not my thing. You haven't gone to a concert by yourself. You haven't gone to a game by yourself. Look, MJ was playing his last game in Atlanta in 2003 with the Wizards. I'm from Augusta. My dad couldn't go. It was winter break. It was, December, whatever. As a freshman, I was home for break. I put myself in a car. I drove myself to Atlanta for the first time. I parked downtown Atlanta. I scalped a ticket and set myself by myself at a game to watch the guy that was bigger than anything else in sports. And, it doesn't make me a better person for doing that. But if you're constantly in comfortable situations, it's like there's only so much upside to life, whether it's career wise or your own professional development. And so if you don't do it now, if you don't start getting exposed to those situations that are uncomfortable, foreign study is a perfect one, right? I mean, it's a controlled environment. Hell, I mean, they organize everything for you, but it's going to be a different country speaking a different language with different people. Like, do some of that, because we leave our little homes, we come here, we can kind of live in a bubble, feel like we're doing something because we're playing the sport and other people aren't doing it. And then the moment we get out of it, we just kind of revert back to that life that we had. And next thing you know, you're kind of, 40, like, like me. And so I don't know, stress yourself, make yourself put yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, I agree with that. Comfort is like carbon monoxide. It is, your comfort zone really is carbon monoxide. It's odorless, it's it's poison, it's tasteless, but it will slowly kill you. And as an athlete, we're put in uncomfortable situations and scenarios all the time. So we're used to that sports wise. So even going back to that question, like during the interview process, you're used to being in these uncomfortable situations. You're used to having to figure it out. And you do need to constantly keep pushing yourself to be uncomfortable, to go for the things that you don't necessarily think maybe you're qualified for, right? Or qualified yet for. But you also need to, keep learning. That's the thing. You never want to stop learning, because you just never know where your path is going to take you. Your sport is a vehicle. It can get you but so far. It can open some doors for you. It can cultivate some relationships for you. But outside of that, then you have to still be able to come to the table and be able to speak about certain things or prove or show certain things. So it's also important that you keep learning, for sure.
And this is just a small thing to add. I think all the other panelists said some great things that I would just echo. This is something that really helped me in my time at Furman, that I sort of started end of freshman year going to sophomore year, and I've continued through, is just having a hobby outside of academics and athletics that grounds you as a person. And I think that's really important, to have an outlet that isn't those two avenues, because you're always so focused and spend a lot of time on those two things. And that's including extracurriculars as well. So for me, I started doing yoga, which I know Kena is a great yoga instructor. But for me, and sometimes, after practice, or if I had morning practice, it wasn't the thing I wanted to do after class. But if I was stressed, it was definitely an escape, something where you could put your phone down, read a book. I remember I used to go to, when I was doing laundry, when I lived in Lakeside, which is now the Clark Murphy complex, I would play the piano in the practice rooms while I was waiting for my laundry to dry. So that was just a little escape that I could have, that wasn't, when I was so focused on the uncomfort and putting myself in new situations, or grinding on the field, extra work, putting time in classes. It was kind of an escape where I could just put things down for a second. And for me, I think that was very important. So I, stayed sane throughout the process and managed my stress, because you are asked, or your coaches and your professors, a lot is asked of you as a student athlete. So I think it's very important to carve out that time when you need it, hopefully before like a mental breakdown or anything, to just really center yourself and make sure you're not, things can get very overwhelming. So I would definitely add that to everything that the panelists said.
Gotcha. We're going to have about one or two of us answer this, so we can try to get to as many of the questions. A lot of them you already answered, so great job by our panelists. But and anyone can jump in, and if no one jumps in, I'll designate someone. But has your status of an athlete or your status of a Furman student, has that helped you succeed more in the working world? Rachel, you're nodding. Oh, go ahead. I don't know. Was that James?
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So I'll say the one thing you can do, and really you can tell your non-athlete friends this, your friends at other schools, use LinkedIn to just like search people in industries that went to your school that are in a career path that you want. So I told you how my one career path failed. I really wanted to work for an athletic brand. I really love sneakers, as you can tell. And so I found all the Furman employees at Nike, Adidas, New Balance. Actually, there's a really, the guy, Stanford Jennings, he returned a kick for a Super Bowl, like in the Super Bowl for the Bengals. He's a Furman grad and he's very high up at New Balance. And me and him have a great relationship. He's kind of like a mentor to me. Unfortunately, never got a job from it. But that's okay, right? Not everything leads to a job, but just use that ability, right, to reach out to people. And I mean, saying you're an athlete is a cherry on top, right? But having Furman as a close-knit community, right? There's like, 3,000 kids there at one time. So that means, just the alumni are going to help, right? We already have heard that. So use the power of the Furman network to find people that are in it who have graduated. And even companies, as I've joined them post-graduation, I've found Furman grads at the company. I've reached out. There's an immediate connection.
No, that's great advice. So I'm just going to jump in because Stanford Jennings, obviously, James cross country and track and field. Well, Stanford Jennings was a football player. So there's your network already from the athletes. And then using LinkedIn for the New Balance thing, Cindy Davis was a huge Nike exec. She's a trustee for Furman. So, using those connections and then also knowing that you're an athlete, huge thing. So LinkedIn, we talked about it with our team a couple of days ago. That is, now don't go on there. It is not Instagram. It is not Facebook. Don't go on there with all this with personals. It is a business networking tool that is very, very powerful. So if you haven't created that LinkedIn, and I know the Malone Center also has, I'm going to throw the plug out there for Ellie and Rebecca. I know the Malone Center has like a program that they can do to help you with your LinkedIn profile if you don't know how to create that, so you can visit them. So Rachel, you want to hit on something else?
Yes. Just to echo one more time what James said, because it's very important. And I think networking can be daunting. And again, that's putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation. I would say that even though Furman is small, the alumni branch and network really extends throughout the nation and the world. So if once you find that one connection who can really serve you as a mentor, they'll connect you with other people, and they'll really pay it forward because they were once in your shoes and know, the not the struggle, but the process you have to go through to land that first job. And I would say athletics are definitely very prominent on my floor in investment banking. I work at a big firm on Wall Street. There's a huge athletic presence and veteran presence. And I think because of those skills you learn, they want to have those types of people on their team. And I would say not just my division, but divisions throughout the bank. So people are definitely looking for student athletes. And honestly, I think that's maybe one of the reasons my resume didn't get immediately dropped is because I had the student athlete and I was holding, I had good grades, I was involved, and being an athlete and having those other non-negotiables, it just puts you ahead of, the people you are competing against to, land.
Sorry. I was just going to add, Furman network is great. LinkedIn networking is great. But it goes beyond that. Forget about Furman, right? It's you should presumptively assume that you have a really interesting one meaningful fact about you relative to every other college kid that was not a student athlete, and that you're a student athlete. Business world loves student athletes. You're not going to get a job just because of that. My GPA was whatever. It was fine. There's a bunch of people with high GPA. The fact that I play football is the career path that I'm on. Then obviously, at some point, you got to be good at your job and what have you. But do not forget about the people you're presumptively assumed to be unique, because there's not that many people that do what you did, which is be a student and an athlete. And Wall Street freaking loves it. We love it. We got a bunch of athletes in here for a reason, at the expense of almost being like, oh, this is a jock, place. If you didn't play sport, you're not going to get to work at this firm. But there's a reason for that. And people love that. And so when you develop zero fear for being able to proactively reach out to somebody, whether they're Furman or not, that's a huge advantage for you in a career. And you should have very little fear in just being kind of proactive. What are they going to do? Turn you down for a call or not answer an email? I mean, welcome to the club. And people get rejected all the time to unanswered emails or calls. So
I think that's a great point. You're going to get rejected, by the way,
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's no longer you're one of the stars or you're on the team, and you're going to get rejected. People are going to tell you you're not good enough, and as James said, he had to pivot because it didn't. His first career path went that way. Like I said, I was pre-med. I'm a basketball coach. I took a sharp right somewhere in my career path, so you're going to get rejected. So I think everybody just needs to realize that. I know we're on the home stretch. I know somebody was going to add, but I'm going to throw in one more question I think is super important. We're just talking about adversity, and we've already talked about the adjustment from being a college student athlete to the working world and the real world. This may be our last question depending on time. We know that adjustment is hard. What would you suggest to do to make that transition easier? So we talked about how hard it was. Now, what is your suggestion to this group to make the transition easier?
Internships. I say that as somebody that literally was just interviewing students for an internship. As a student athlete, well, when we were at Furman, we weren't allowed to work, and we just didn't have a lot of time to do other things. But having an internship specifically in the area that you think you want to work in is important. And the more that you can show on a resume, because as a student, your resume is like this long, right? So you're really talking about what employers are looking for is your coursework, right? Your coursework. What classes did you take? So are you just applying for an internship for an internship's sake, or is this what you really are interested in learning about? So they're going to look at your coursework. Some care about your grades, some don't. But are there clubs on campus so for example, one of my biggest clients is a commercial real estate firm. And so we were just hiring for investment interns. And as the track record for an investment intern would be financial analyst. And then you can decide if you want to stay in the real estate side or go into the acquisition side. But with that being said, what have you done thus far? So we had some students that were a part of their college or university's real estate investment club, or they have, finance clubs or whatever. So those are also things that you can do and show that, hey, I was an athlete. Yes. So we already know you're a student athlete. You're coming with a certain set of skills, soft skills, transferable skills. Great. But what can you show that you've done in the process of that always continued learning, right? And where you've taken yourself out of the sport and put yourself into, okay, I want to work in the corporate world at some point, so I need to have this experience. So internships.
And a quick thing off that, just be okay with swinging and missing on an internship. Like, just go do an internship. If it's terrible, it's 3 months and you're done. You learn from it, do another internship or try something else, and that's okay too.
No, that's a great point. I was dead set. Again, pre-med, I was like, I'm going to be an orthopedic. I did my internship. I hated it. It was all workers' comp list. And my other part of my internship was OBGYN. I definitely did not anticipate doing that, and I loved it. So sometimes those internships can tell you what you love and also what you hate before you actually get in the job and do all the school for that job. So that's a great point.
I think a piece of advice sort of related to that transition, getting the internship, getting the job, and that security process. I remember when I was really stressed and I didn't necessarily have a roadmap. I was just in a conversation with my dad, probably very stressed about networking, and I had an end goal and something I wanted to do, but then it was all the legwork to get there. Right. And then I was questioning, is that really what I want to do, while I was still in my sophomore year? So there are a lot of questions. And he was like, you know what, you've been through this process before. It's just different. Like recruiting to even get to Furman, to play on your sports team. Everyone's gone through that. And I approached getting my job as the same way I approached recruiting in high school. So I had, my spreadsheets. I was like, this is what I want to do, pros and cons of these jobs. Sort of like schools, like this is what this school is willing to offer me. This school's, just to weigh my different options. You can do that if you're trying to narrow down a career. But sort of approaching it that way for me really helped, bring me some clarity and helped me, get to the end goal, which was securing the final job. So just maybe that'll be helpful for some of you if you try that.
Also ask for informational interviews. So you can leverage the alumni network to do that, or you can leverage LinkedIn to do that. But just, can we do a virtual coffee where I ask you, some questions, for 10, 15 minutes? Can I shadow you for a day or a week or whatever, just so you get this realistic job preview? Those are also things that can help in your transition. You help you figure out the things that you like, things that you don't. A lot of students, when they get jobs, their first job, they have no idea what it means to work in an office setting. And so they just lack the emotional intelligence of what it means to be an employee with coworkers. So that's also important. So asking for, the opportunity to shadow folks and just be in an office setting and all of that stuff is important and helpful.
Last question, because I know we're about 3 minutes, so it's going to be your quick answers. But what do you miss the most about your time as a student athlete? Or what do you miss most about Furman? It could be both, one or another, but 30 seconds or less.
Living next door to my best friends.
James at the dining hall, so I'm not sure if that still applies.
Yeah, just being able to do so many things you love, your sport, you're in a great time in your life. Furman's an awesome place. I miss all those things.
The team, it would, especially having been fortunate to have been on teams that played for something, that had a chance. We lost in the semis one year, we lost in the quarterfinals the year before. That whole journey was so committed. And when you look back as an adult, how different the 100 people are, the backgrounds, the diversity, and how committed we were. Nothing ever replicates anything like that. I love what I do. I love so many things about my life. I'm so thankful for it. But there was a question here: is like, how do you, get this energy? How do you replicate? Like, you don't replicate. It's never the freaking same. The moment, like with the whole season, the last time Brian Bratton was going to either be on my team, we were high school teammates against James Madison. That moment on that 4th and 1, we didn't get to stop, but like, there's nothing in life to replicate like that. It's like the whole team was going to die. The existence of that team. It's the most authentic high. The highs and the lows. The lows are the ones that really make you alive. I don't want to keep losing. But like when you lose a big time game, shit. Like you knew you were in it, and it all mattered. And so there ain't nothing like that out there. Maybe there is for the people that are coaching and playing, but there's nothing like that out there. So you're living it now, and it's so good.
Yeah, Kena.
I agree. I miss my teammates. I miss the camaraderie that we had, the way we held each other accountable, like the highs, the lows, the wins, the championship that we had, getting blown out by Tennessee after that. Yeah, all of that was, it was a phenomenal experience, and it shaped who I am. Those 4 years were very formative years in character development. So for sure, miss my girls, and even our crazy coaches, miss them too, because they instilled a lot in us. Furman is a very different place now than it was, 21 years ago when I graduated. But, I think Chick-fil-A opened while we were there. Like it's a thing, I feel like we're like founders on this call, Jackie. This is weird.
I miss that. I miss that in North Village. So
Okay. Yeah. So like North Village, we were the first ones to live in North Village, and Chick-fil-A was like a thing. So just that experience. When I drive by Furman now, I can see North Village, from Poinsett Highway. And I tell my son all the time, like, yep, I lived over there, I-206, that was us, So yeah, I definitely miss just college and the freedom that you have from 18 to 21 or 22. Because life gets real the moment that you graduate and walk across the stage. So make the most of it, because I definitely would have practiced harder. I would have been a better teammate. I wasn't a bad teammate, but I could have been a better teammate, that kind of thing. So yeah, don't squander this time, because it's precious, and there's so many people that would love to exchange, trade places with you. So make the most of it.
It definitely goes by really fast. And I would say with all this talk about the future and next steps, definitely still take time and be in the moment and don't take it for granted, because just yesterday I was moving into Blackwell and now I'm out of school. So,
Well, you'll all be happy to know that all the dorms are being renovated now. So Blackwell is no longer going to look like Blackwell. But I don't know if Ellie and Rebecca want to pop on and give their plug. The Malone Center is available for all of our current students. It is a phenomenal resource. I know they did an activity with our team. So I would encourage you all to talk to your coaches. They've also been at our head coaches meeting, so they're very aware. So let them know, hey, we would love to know about resume building and LinkedIn and all those things that are available, because, you know, like Adi said, like many of you have never had a job, or there's a place where you can get, you know, networking. There's a place where we have someone on campus that can point you to the right direction of the internships. And then a lot of your coaches, all of our coaches, we have phenomenal coaches that will support you through that. So if that's something you want to look at, make sure you're talking to your coaches and meet up with, Ellie's been an amazing ambassador for student athletes and connecting the Malone Center. So, and then Rebecca, do you want to, I know all the panelists are available to be contacted. I'm in Timmons Arena, come see me anytime. And I think you guys are going to let them know how they can reach all of our panelists. So.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure we follow up with everybody that attended and send, the contact information for the panelists and just a thank you for attending. And we'll also just, share a little blurb about how to get in touch with the Malone Center if you want some assistance with that. Ellie, you have anything to add?
No, just thank you to the panelists for giving up your time this afternoon or this evening, and thanks to Coach Carson for facilitating this. We hope we can do more of these events in the future, and just thanks to you for doing this.